You mentioned a phrase in LA, leading is about learning. Can you expand on that for us?
If you cut through all the clutter of advice, leadership is about being able to adapt to change because the only certainty in this life is that tomorrow is going to be different from today. Something will happen, and as a leader, I'm going to have to respond to it. Take Blockbuster as a classic example. I joined as a transitionary leader to transform the company to a digital platform. That required an entirely different leadership approach, style, etc. The only way you can adapt is by learning from your people. To be able to pivot and adapt to any environmental conditions may be the hardest thing to learn because as humans, we resist change. And when change happens, it's our learning, it's our knowledge that creates the confidence to be able to deal with change.
I'm Garrett Wong, and this is the Investing to Win podcast. How do you define success, and what does winning look like for you? Hi, Jim.
Garrett, you got your books up there. I'm going to put my book up there.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Appreciate you taking the time today, Jim. It's an honor. I know that we have a little bit of time today, so I think just for my audience, for the podcast, I'm just going to kind of bullet point your experience and your past. So, former CEO of 7-Eleven, former CEO of Blockbuster, focused on positioning Blockbuster for the digital age by acquiring MovieLink in 2007, and then facing significant challenges, led to Blockbuster's transition out of the market and subsequent sale to Dish Network. Author of Education is Freedom, The Future is in Your Hands, founded the Education is Freedom Institute or Foundation, promoting educational opportunities for underserved youth, and active in philanthropy, education, and leadership development. Yeah, just a breadth of experience. And again, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Garrett.
No, absolutely. What I'd like to maybe ask you first is Blockbuster. I mean, I heard you on stage in LA. The digital shift, if you could reflect on your attempt to pivot into the digital age with MovieLink, what would you do differently today in this digital first landscape?
There's not much more I could have done at the time because the challenge was it was a waiting game for Wi-Fi and for technology to catch up. So we had capability beyond most others, including Netflix, because we had acquired, as you mentioned, a company called MovieLink that had the digital rights to all the new titles. We had 3,000 new releases basically in our library where Netflix hadn't even acquired content yet at the time. So we actually had the capability in the content before Netflix. The challenge was Wi-Fi was terrible at the time. There was very little access. The heavy buffering bandwidth was extremely limited, and there were no apps. So there was a very difficult challenge of getting the content to the ultimate consumer in a way that they could easily access it. So we tried a couple of things. One was an acquisition, and this was something that many people forget, and it was quite controversial. But we tried to acquire Circuit City. Now, on the surface, it looks like the dumbest thing ever. Why would Blockbuster, with too many stores, right, arguably, try to acquire another company with too many stores when everything was moving electronic? Well, here's why. As the second largest consumer products retailer in the United States, they had massive power over the manufacturers. Our dream was acquire Circuit City, close the big box stores, let the small box Blockbuster stores be the place you could literally buy any consumer electronics device and have it shipped the next day, but have every device that you buy come with the Blockbuster streaming capability built right into that device, either on the remote or icons weren't even, it's hard to imagine that icons weren't even out, but Apple didn't release its iPhone until 2007. And so that was our dream, to use the power of a consumer electronics retailer to be able to push the manufacturers, Samsung, Sony, Dell Computers, everybody but Apple. Apple was doing their own thing. But we were trying to create that ecosystem to make streaming easier and more effective.
You know, it's interesting you say the Wi-Fi capabilities weren't up to snuff back then. I mean, I'm trying to remember in 2007, but I do remember a world of being sort of jacked into the wall with laptops and things like that. I mean, why the focus on Wi-Fi? Because if I remember back then, I mean, if I wanted to, I'm thinking if I wanted to stream a movie, I would be hardwired into my CPU, my laptop, whatever. And yet you guys were concerned with Wi-Fi.
Yeah, even that experience was not good, and let's face it, laptops didn't have the kind of, you know, visual acuity that they have today. They were not built for video. And I remember at the time I was talking to BlackBerry about build me a screen that I could bigger that I can stream movies on. Give me a capability like an iPad. They thought I was nuts. So they're like, no, you don't understand. The people aren't going to look at movies on portable devices. They want to watch them on TVs and big screens. So it was hard to get people to have a vision for what's possible in a world, and I know it's hard today because you look back and you go, "Well, of course, why didn't you just watch it on your laptop?" It would not have been a good experience, I can assure you. That old, IBM laptop that was built for text and not video.
Yeah, that's true. I remember sitting on an airplane and so proud that I was able to get down to, I don't even know, 720 was not the reality on this little BlackBerry screen. And I'm proud on an airplane watching this movie like this. So I can't even, yeah, it's very interesting to see how things have changed. You mentioned a phrase in LA, leading is about learning. Can you expand on that for us?
Yeah, I laugh at all these leadership books, everybody's got a, leading by servant leadership. Huh? You know, at some point, you can't be a servant to everybody, you have to make a decision. Leading by walking around. I mean, there's management by walking, and there's all kinds of leadership tips. But if you cut through all the clutter of advice, leadership is about being able to adapt to change because only certainty in this life is that tomorrow is going to be different from today. Something will happen. And as a leader, I'm going to have to respond to it. And so take Blockbuster as a classic example. I joined as a transitionary leader to transform the company to a digital platform. I had to pivot to a crisis leadership style because the whole financial markets meltdown in 2008 caused us now to be on defense versus offense. We had to
Right.
be able to protect our balance sheet and get it refinanced. That required an entirely different leadership approach, style, etc. So the only way you can adapt is by learning and by constantly learning. And I mean learning in the sense of, learning leadership skill, yes, learning from your people, but learning to be able to pivot and adapt to any environmental conditions may be the hardest thing to learn because as humans, we resist change. And when change happens, it's our learning, it's our knowledge that creates the confidence to be able to deal with change.
Well, I think you mentioned, and I hope I'm not butchering the phrase, but I think you said the antidote to fear is knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in fact, I think I showed a visual that I love because it explains so much to me. I've dealt with so many crises in the corporate world. At the heart of it all is people are scared to death when something changes. And that fear causes paralysis. It causes people to be like deer in the headlights. And it even worse, fear leads to people being angry, and then angry can lead to all kinds of bad behaviors. Um, I compare it to a kid being afraid of the dark. What do? You turn on the light. What's
Yeah.
light? Knowledge. Oh, there isn't a monster under the bed. I don't really have anything to be afraid of. So knowledge to me I mean that metaphor of turning on the light, that's knowledge replacing fear, creating understanding. Understanding leads to hope and hope leads to opportunity.
Yeah, when you mentioned your superpower, change, confidence, and clarity. I mean, I think you're just outlining all three of those powerful C's right there.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and if you can harness that, and it sounds so easy, it's like, "Oh, those are easy words." Yeah, change, confidence, "Oh, I'm confident," and then
If
something
it were
bad
easy,
yeah, if it
everybody would
were
be doing it.
easy, anybody would do it. But the second something bad happens, we revert to our caveman self, and we start blaming others, and we feel like we're the victim, and woe is me, and all that is just negativity that keeps you from being successful.
Yeah, no, for sure. What do you think or believe that the biggest opportunities now are for business in this digital age, and what risks should our leaders be most concerned about?
I think probably the thing it's part of the reason I wrote that book. In the book, Education is Freedom, I present what I call the meta skills. And the meta skills are the things I think are even more important than ever before in the information age. Now, here's some examples of meta skills. I just gave you three: change, confidence, clarity. Nobody teaches that, right? You can't get, I didn't learn confidence in Columbia Business School. Um, it's something you have to work at and rewire your brain to be able to have confidence. Um, and there are ways to do that. So I'm encouraging people to embrace these skills. But going to the foundation of what I call the hierarchy of success is one of the most important of these meta skills that I talk about. It's character. Because in the information age, that's when our character as humans really gets tested. In other words, this element of character, I basically call it our brand, right? It's what people see and feel when they interact with us. So it's our integrity, our humility, our gratitude, our compassion. It's what's inside that counts. And with the massive influx now of information, it's more important than ever before that as humans, we can separate fact from fiction. We can engage our critical thinking skills to ask why. Why did that meme say that? And where was it sent from? And what was the motive behind it? And is it even true? If we can't do that as humans, we will devolve into a even more polarized society that is riddled with fear, anger, and violence, as opposed to doing what the subtitle of my book says, "The future is in your hands."
Hmm.
More important than ever before as humans for us to engage these basic human skills of confidence, change, clarity, cultural literacy, understanding each other, collaboration, working together. These are the things that I think will make us even more successful in the information age. But it's up to us. The future is in our hands.
Well, especially with AI rearing its head, I mean, leaders are going to have to adapt. I mean, it's here. There's no fear about it. It's here. You have to adapt, or you're going to die as a business.
Exactly. Exactly. But any business is going to be full of people that are riddled with fear. And the leadership, that's where the leadership has to be able to help that team overcome their fear. So together you can move forward. Otherwise, it's like a silent gas that will destroy an organization. That fear will destroy an organization if not, if the leader doesn't sort it out and lead people through it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the time's flown by, and I always like to reserve a minute or two for the last word and the question I love to ask every guest. Um, so, Jim, this is the Investing to Win podcast. How do you define success, and what does winning look like for you?
Mm. To me, winning is a life of adventure. It's every day I wake up, I can't wait to see what interesting thing is going to happen. And I get that from learning. I don't get that. Yes, I've been blessed with financial success. And yes, that helps. but it doesn't provide happiness. Happiness comes from the beauty of life and engaging with others and doing really cool things. So that's to me my definition of success.
Yeah, couldn't say it any better. Well, thanks again for agreeing to be on the podcast. Just a wealth of knowledge. I'm sure everybody is going to be enjoying your book as well. So, yeah, I will definitely see you around in JT Fox's network.
All right, look forward to it. Thanks, Garrett.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.